This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories, and welcome to my review of the Lord of the Rings musical. And if you don't know what this is, and you would like to see it, it's only going to be in the US for just a few more days. It is going to be here until September 1st. It is in Chicago at Navy Piers Shakespeare Theater. So if you're not in the Midwest right now, you're kind of out of luck. I think it's going to New Zealand next. So if you haven't had a chance to see this and you really want to, tickets should still be available, but unless you're in the Midwest or willing to drop a bunch of money on a flight to Chicago for just seeing the play, then you're probably not going to be able to see this. But yeah, honestly, this is a pretty interesting thing. I was really worried going into this since it's only about 2 hours 45 minutes. And when you think about it, The Lord of the Rings is either a 12-ish hour movie, if you're watching it correctly, or a roughly just over a little bit over 1,000-page book. And they have to adapt that into a roughly 3-hour play that is a quarter of the time the movies took, and even those weren't able to get everything. So, first, I think it's important to go through what they did and not include, because although it is a really good, enjoyable play, they do have to cut a lot of it out. Mainly, if you're just looking at like in movie terms, they essentially cut out all of Two Towers. In book form, the only thing from Two Towers is essentially meeting Gollum and Shelob's lair. But to go into specifically what they did is the first roughly half of the play is retelling the events of Fellowship of the Ring. It's pretty accurate there. Only thing I really noticed from the first half that wasn't super faithful is Frodo gets stabbed by the Witch King. I mean, technically it's just a Nazgul and not a Witch King, but he gets stabbed by him inside of the Prancing Pony and not on Weathertop. They also cut out Tom Bombadil here also, which I think they should have added like 20 minutes into it to have Tom Bombadil. It's a Lord of the Rings musical, and he is a musical character. I think that they very easily could have added him in and just had this small little section with just Tom Bombadil doing a musical number because he is essentially a musical character and is always singing. And speaking of him, I'm interested to see how they do him in Rings of Power, and my review of that will probably be out tomorrow night. But going back to this musical, everything with Fellowship, as I said, mainly minus them cutting out Tom Bombadil, well, just like the movies, and Frodo being stabbed in the Prancing Pony instead of on Weathertop. More or less everything is the same. Again, this is all kind of condensed down into about an hour, 15 minutes, but it was still just a lot of fun what they did with it. And considering that they managed to really well tell the story of the Fellowship of the Ring in roughly an hour, I think that is truly impressive and is something they definitely get a big, good thumbs up from me from. I think that's really impressive they were able to do that. But obviously, adapting Fellowship of the Ring so well is going to be hurting a lot on the adaptations of Two Towers and Return of the King, where roughly is that half the play is just adapting Fellowship of the Ring. It has all the major moments. As I said, besides Weathertop and Bombadil, everything else is done, and the musical stuff is incorporated really well. Generally feel like there's maybe one or two times where, like, maybe they need to do a musical number here, but it was never bad. It was always a lot of fun, and the entire cast was amazing. Going to the second half, they cut so much stuff out. As I mentioned earlier, if you watch the Two Towers movie, and you're thinking of it that way, essentially nothing from the Two Towers movie made it in. But if you look at the book, the only things you really get is the Taming of Smeagol, Merry and Pippin meeting Treebeard, and then finally the battle with Shelob and Saruman's banishment. And the biggest thing in this is Rohan is completely cut out of the story. The entire battles of Isengard, Helm's Deep, and the Battle of Pelennor Fields are all condensed down into a battle at Gondor, even though, just for the really weird reason, they do use most of the character names and location names. The only thing they don't do in name, even though they put some pretty deep references in there to stuff that Frodo calls out, like Elbereth and Gathoniel and the Light of Arundel. But for whatever reason, they do not name Denethor, they do not name Gondor, and they do not name Isildur. All three have major importances to the plot. Isildur for it being his blade that was broken, and the twist of it being Aragorn being Isildur's heir is saved until Boromir's death, where Boromir finds the sword that was broken with Aragorn, realizing that he is the heir of Isildur. And they don't say Isildur, but since we know the characters' names, I'm going to be mentioning them. And Isildur is only referred to as the king. Denethor is only referred to as the steward. And it's just more. Gondor is just more referred to the realm of men. And is never just specifically said by name. Also, the really weird thing about Denethor is he's essentially a combination of Theoden and Denethor, but personality-wise and character-wise, he's just Theoden taking the place of Denethor in the story. And he is fully being the one corrupted by Saruman, and that's the reason he gives up. In the books, it is him being corrupted by the Palantir, and in the movies, it's just more him going mad with grief. And honestly, it was that was another one of the little bit of low points. That was honestly my least favorite part of it. It essentially took some of the coolest and most epic parts of the entire trilogy, being the battles of Helm's Deep and the battles of Pelennor Fields, and it roughly shoved it into like a 20 to 30 minute segment. It was literally just all together, and Gandalf's return, instead of happening in Fangorn, happens with him showing up with the Ents to save Gondor. Again, not called Gondor in it, but I'm using the official names that we know of. And then there's everything with Saruman. He's more or less serves as the more major antagonist. We never see anything besides the name of Sauron being mentioned. There is no Barad-dûr set, and there's nothing to represent really his eye. There's a few times where the fiery letters of the ring show up to sort of represent him, but besides that, really nothing. And just continuing through the events of the Two Towers of Return of the King, it goes from Frodo and Gollum meeting, skipping over everything with Faramir. Faramir is not even included at all during this. It seems that either Boromir is an only child or Faramir just doesn't appear in the story at all. It then goes to look at them going from that scene to essentially them reaching Mordor, then Gollum having, after we have a pretty good musical number between Frodo and Sam, which is adapting the part where they're talking about the great tales and of Frodo and the Ring, and then there's this great musical number where Frodo is thinking of just how much he needs Sam while Sam is asleep. So that removes one of the best parts where Sam is like, I was being serious and you're only kidding, and Frodo's like, no, I'm dead serious about this. That's one of the best parts of both the books and the movies, and sadly it didn't make it into the musical, but still it has this really great part. And then there is Gollum, who goes into his own song about how he's planning to betray the hobbits and take the ring for himself. The performance is very heavily influenced by Andy Serkis's portrayal. The actor was doing a really close imitation of Andy Serkis's voice, and while you can definitely tell it isn't the exact same, it was still pretty close. And if they wanted someone to play Andy Serkis' version of Gollum in a game or something, they could hire him to do a good enough impersonation. And just going back to him in the song, he does this as he's contemplating whether or not he should betray Frodo, and eventually does. They then have the entire thing with Shelob's Lair, which was really impressive, where they have this giant Shelob puppet. And just going back to the Fellowship of the Ring, they do have the Balrog scene, but it's more just a dark cloth that they're throwing everywhere with a bunch of lights on it. On the other hand, with this one for Shelob, they have this giant spider puppet that they have a bunch of people in like black morph suits carrying out on the stage. Have this really awesome fight, and then they also just skip over everything with the big battle of Frodo being captured and Sam going to save him from Cirith Ungol. That is all cut out, and it is just simply made to have the Mithril shirt save Frodo from Shelob's sting, and instead of the entire Cirith Ungol battle, there is a fight where Sam takes the ring off of Frodo to lift the load from him for a few minutes, and Frodo kind of goes nuts with Gollum, both of them attacking Sam for the ring, where Frodo eventually gets it back and sort of calms down. And that's just such a fun little scene, completely different than anything in the movies or books, but it was just a nice little touch for this one. Then continuing on, there is a small little scene where we get, I can't remember exactly where well this one was for a moment, but there's a little song between Aragorn and Arwen where, I know it is around here. It's with Aragorn and Arwen. Both are in different places, but they have a a cross stars thing where they do kiss in this scene, and then it's also put into place where Aragorn gets the sort of Andúril reforged, and they make up their plan to go and do the charge against Sauron and distract him at the Black Gate. Then it ultimately goes to the end where there is the battle at the Black Gate, and it's not much of a battle. It's more of them being there, and then some of the orcs coming out. There's not that many scenes really with orcs. Oh, another thing they kind of changed around was instead of the orcs capturing Merry and Pippin more or less escape to Fangorn while Boromir is killed. And with this one, they sort of have this like small little fight, and then it changes to the final scene where Frodo and Sam go to destroy the ring. As usual, Gollum takes the ring from Frodo, and he does fall in. They make it this really elaborate version where they have this kind of like spiraling fire image in the background and people carrying Gollum down. They then put him on a stage for a few minutes to have him like look like he's more slowly falling, and then they grab him again and carry him down through doors to represent him falling to his death and the ring being destroyed. And yeah, honestly, it goes to there, then to the crowning of Aragorn, them returning to the Shire where they basically just narrate that the scouring of the Shire happened, but Saruman has already escaped and they're not going to go after him. So technically, Saruman is still a loose hanging thread, and technically they could make a sequel to it where Saruman returns, but very clearly it's meant to be over. They then go and sort of have a wrap up with Sam rebuilding the Shire with the box from Galadriel. Kind of wish they took maybe like another 10-15 minutes to actually do Scouring of the Shire. And they could have just used Bill Ferny as a replacement for Grima Wormtongue, since it more or less seemed like that's what they were doing in this. And they could have had that with the hobbits going up to try and stop Saruman and Frodo wanting to go peacefully, and then finally having Saruman killed by Bill Ferny. But yeah, honestly, that was a little disappointing at the end with the Scouring the Shire. Most being saying, yeah, it happened, but it was all finished by the time the hobbits returned and Saruman already escaped. And then it goes to the ending where it gives you all the wrap up and Frodo getting the offer to go on the ship. It only seems like it's him, Gandalf, Galadriel, and I'm assuming Elrond, although I didn't see him go on with him. It ends with just seeing the images of the shadows of Frodo and Gandalf being shown, and then everyone goes to a bow and then does one of the songs. I think it was the Song of the Prancing Pony, more or less adapted off of Tolkien's adaptation of the Cat and the Fiddle. But yeah, honestly, it was so impressive how much they managed to get into here. I missed like a thing or two, but they just managed to fit so much in. Going through everything, the entire cast was amazing. One thing that honestly I didn't really mind it for the story. They never really mentioned it, but there's probably that one person who will look up and be like, "Why is Mary being played by a woman?" But honestly, I didn't really care. All the characters were the same. They also had this like really weird thing with Pippin where he was scared of trees. I think I just made things just a little more for joke opportunities with Treebeard. And Merry and Pippin also, besides getting Treebeard on their side, didn't do their big heroic moments of the books, with Merry helping Eowyn kill the Witch King, and on the other hand, we don't have Pippin saving Faramir from his father's madness. And Denethor's madness is really easily cured when Aragorn pulls the sword out. And he also takes the place of Theoden in the final battle where I mean, it's like a blink and you miss thing. He's kind of killed in the background of the battle. But yeah, honestly, this was a really fun play. If you get the chance to see it, I highly recommend to do it because it's a really good adaptation. I'd say the movies are honestly a lot better, but they also have like 4 times the amount of time to tell everything and are actually able to put in like CG characters and have big clashes between armies. This is all done on a stage with a group of actors, a bunch of people playing other characters, which made it really impressive. They had just a bunch of great stuff added in. Tom Bombadil does get a mention in it, which is one more than he gets in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where Gandalf just says, I'm going to go talk to Tom Bombadil for a while, and then I'll see you in the fall, Frodo. And then they also have the fact that Sam is the one who writes Lord of the Rings instead of Frodo. And yeah, honestly, this was a just really fun story. The play was just a really great time. They adapted things as well as they could with a 3 hour runtime. Honestly, I think, if they added an extra hour, maybe they could have adapted things just a little bit better. But I think maybe at most, I want to see like another half an hour, add a Tom Bombadil section in, and flesh out Scouring of the Shire because adding Rohan in and everything just way too convoluted for it to be fitting into this shorter runtime. Obviously, if they did this as a extremely long play, they could have probably done that, but having actors memorize probably at a bare minimum, you could probably do Lord of the Rings like play adapting everything in maybe 5 hours at the minimum, but I'm saying probably closer to 6, and that'd be like essentially double the length of the current musical and would be just a way bigger of an event. But what they managed to do is still really impressive. It was a lot of fun. I even got a $40 t-shirt there. Surprisingly, it was not taxed to all insanity and it was only $40 flat. So I'm assuming tax and everything was included in that because if you've ever been to Chicago, pretty high tax and, well, sales tax. So yeah, honestly, that's really all I have to say. A lot of fun. I highly recommend going to it if you have the chance. But again, it finishes its run on the 1st of September, and then it's going to, I'm pretty sure, New Zealand. So if you live in the Midwest or within at least driving distance of Chicago, I highly recommend to go see this. If you can't, and I think it is disappointing because it is a lot of fun. And if you live in New Zealand, again, don't quote me on this, I'm like 90% sure that's where they said they were going next on the website. You could also go see it when they come there. And yeah, honestly, some of those things I want to mention is I think some of the costumes were pretty heavily inspired by the Peter Jackson trilogy, mainly the Hobbits, who looked really similar dress-wise to how they looked in the movies. Bilbo also looked pretty similar in terms of how he dressed. And while Gollum wasn't exactly the same, he had like a pair of ripped up shorts instead of just a loincloth. His performance, as I said, was more or less a really good imitation of Andy Serkis's performance. So yeah, as I said, I highly recommend seeing this if you have a chance to. But obviously, this isn't something like a movie where you can go and just go to any theater and watch it. You have to go to Navy Pier in Chicago, and on top of that, you also have to pay, I think it was like 90 to like 100 something dollars for a ticket, depending on where you're sitting. I was in one of the first rows, and from sitting there, I was mainly able to see things pretty well. There's a few times when characters were laying low on the stage where you had a hard time seeing them. And all the musical numbers were just a lot of fun. And there's like maybe one or two times where I'm like, maybe you don't need a musical number here. Main one I could think of is when Sam is using the Light of Galadriel and telling Frodo after they fight Shelob that it helped him. They get a musical number where Galadriel starts singing and it transitions to the scene at the Black Gate. That's probably one of the only ones where I felt like maybe they could have saved that for something, like the Scouring of the Shire or for Tom Bombadil. But really, besides that, this was so much fun. The entire audience there was great. Everyone was clapping and cheering at certain points, and the crowning of Aragorn there was nice. But I don't think anything's gonna top the movie version where Aragorn tells him you'll bow to no one. Great moments like learning, Aragorn and Arwen are together, and then this little scene depicting the wedding of Sam and Rosie. But yeah, honestly, the departure of Frodo and Sam, as always, is very emotionally and really well done. But yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. As you can tell, I really enjoyed it overall. Some things I do wish they could do better. It isn't perfect. As I said, I think the Lord of the Rings movies do better since they have so much more time, effects, and budget, but still, it is really enjoyable, and I want to know what you think. Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.